Intercoastal.
On the
Good
intercoastal.
morning, everyone. Hello, welcome. Please have a seat. Plenty of seats. How are you? Forgive me, a little out of it. So I'll trust you guys to keep me honest. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. How many of you guys, is this your first time here?
Absolutely.
Oh, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. For those of you that have been here with us already, the 1 Million Cups is a weekly event to showcase new startups in our community. They come up here, tell us what they're working on, and then it is our responsibility in the audience to ask 20 minutes of incisive questions, whether that's connections to resources or suggestions, whether it's looking for clarification on something, or whether you just didn't understand the basic concept. That's your chance. It helps strengthen them, helps get their ideas out there in the community, and we certainly hope that you will do your duty as part of that. I am Sean Kennedy, one of the organizers here at 1 Million Cups, along with Marianne Bowers, Danielle Whitelock, and in absentia, Richard Wood, Ruben Pressman, and John Mark. You can find out more about 1 Million Cups, including who has presented in the past, who is coming up to present at 1millioncups.com/CP. There is a sign-in sheet by the board if you'd like to get our twice weekly emails. One that tells you who will be presenting, the other tells you who presented, along with links to the information on the events that we'll talk about in the middle portion. I would like to stop talking and introduce Howard with Chart 411, our first presenter. He's got some cool things to say. Great.
This is my Florida pole maker shirt. Anybody remember when we had pole makers? Chart 411. Chart 411. I'm Howard Johnston. I'm not Lucinda Johnston, who's the executive director. She's unfortunately not able to be here today. But what I'd like to start with, if I can do it, is the video of the website. Introduce you to us. Let me have somebody introduce you to us.
The Chart 411, our mission is a simple one: to preserve and protect the history, culture, ecology, and economy of the Gulf of Mexico. Through educational programs, festivals, and media events, we hope to raise awareness and foster stewardship of this magnificent natural treasure. Chart 411, Treasure of the Gulf.
I was once told the best advice I ever got for giving a presentation was have a riveting opening, a compelling conclusion, put it as close together as possible. And that was the riveting opening. The Chart 411, we're a unique organization. We don't focus just on environmental preservation. We focus on cultural preservation, historic preservation, and promotion of the Gulf of Mexico, both as a resource here in our community and also as a national treasure. Some interesting facts about the Gulf: 90% of the mangroves in the United States are located along the Gulf Coast, and they are, as most of you know, the source of virtually every form of sea life that exists. It is shallow, it is fragile, and it is endangered. Now, the reason I point that out to you is that its capacity for renewal is also astonishing. It's absolutely remarkable. And just like my shirt, sometimes it's flamboyant and engaging, and other times it's not as attractive. When you're on a saltwater mud flat on a hot day, you know that the Gulf has a less desirable side as well. But what I want to do is I want to introduce you to us and what we do and why we do it. Our mission is very, very simple: to preserve and promote the history, culture, environment, and economy of the Gulf of Mexico. As I said, it is a national treasure, and it is probably one of the richest resources that we certainly have access to in Florida. One of the most important things to keep in mind is that it is an economic powerhouse. If the Gulf Coast were an economy, a world economy, it would be the 27th largest economy in the world. the number of Americans that inhabit the Gulf Coast is remarkable, and the number of people who visit us, almost 60 million last year alone in Florida, is breathtaking. How did we get started? We're a 501c3 nonprofit. That means that if you give us money today, we'll give you a receipt, you can take it off your taxes. But I don't know if you can see those or not. Those are sand dollars, and we call them our founders. And the reason is that we were at the beach. Lucinda and I were at the beach one day, one weekend. And when we were walking back to our room, we saw that. Somebody had 13 sand dollars lined up on the windowsill of their room. Now, 13 sand dollars, you know what they're going to smell like tomorrow, right? And what they probably didn't know was that they were alive. The dead ones are white. When they're that color, they're alive. And they're not alive for long when they're out in the water anymore. But one of the things that we were aware of was that this car parked outside the room with Ohio tags on it. By the time they got as far as Tennessee, they're going to be throwing those things away. 13 of them. Now, one of the things that struck us was most people don't know much about it. We live on the side of it, and it's like a rich uncle. It's like a rich uncle where we don't pay much attention to him until we want something, but we're always struck and surprised when it becomes ill or when he dies, especially if he doesn't leave us anything. So one of the things that we've been most concerned about is how do we raise awareness about this thing that is right in our backyard and make people a little more interested in preserving it. This is what we do. We do educational outreach. A couple of things that are up here is we produce instructional materials for kids. We actually write a newsletter called Chart Lines. That one, by the way, if anybody's interested, I'll be happy to send you. It's on our website also. It's why small businesses should give their money away to build their own business. We do articles. This appeared in Good Living magazine, and we engage in partnerships with schools and other educational agencies to promote the Gulf. We try to bring exhibits to the schools and other organizations. The other thing we do is we partner with others to promote the Gulf Coast way of life. One of our partners has been Local Shops, and we were delighted last year to be named the outstanding, the best new business. We're good at it. We're good at what we do. I just got a 30-second one. There are some of our other partners. We sponsor and participate in events that promote the Gulf Coast way of life. We were the nonprofit sponsor for the ADP volleyball tournament last year. We participate in Shop-a-Palooza. By the way, nobody ever goes back from the Gulf Coast vacation and says they had a really great meal at Olive Garden. The small businesses along the Gulf Coast are part of our unique environment. Clam Bayou cleanup, we're going to be starting that. One of the dirtiest places along the Gulf Coast. We're going to be starting that very quickly. And we try to build a community. We have 3,318 organic likes and people following us, and we'd like to have you join us as well. And that's it. Questions? Yes?
Have you partnership at all with Tampa Bay Watch?
Yes. What we'll do is we very often wind up in, for example, a birthday. This year, we're one of the sponsors. We're one of the co-sponsors. So we are in that network of environmental organizations here in the area, which is a very rich resource, by the way.
And how do I get involved with you?
You go on our website, and there's a thing that says join us. It's free. And we will keep you posted on what we're up to and what other people are up to and how.
For volunteering?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How many people like you are actually spearheading the company, or how many are spearheading it? Are there 4 of you, 1 of you?
Oh, we're 501c3, so we have a board. We have an executive director. We have a director of development. We have me. I'm kind of I carry stuff around to exhibit. And we have a large number of volunteers. We've got 300 volunteers who work with us on various kinds of projects. But we're a very small, very lean operation. Well, lean maybe is right, but small. So we really do try to keep very much, we try to be sure that our resources go to doing the work rather than anything else. Yeah.
Are you involved in any way with the local schools?
Yes. In fact, we're in the process now of trying to work. In fact, it's interesting. We just did our strategic plan for this coming year. And one of the things that is the key element in that strategic plan is for us to start to focus more directly on working with the, frankly, the lowest performing disadvantaged schools in the area. Now, the reason I say that is I'm an anthropologist by training, and you know, anthropologists wander around and eavesdrop on people for the most part. And what I did was I did a study of some schools in the Bay Area. And what we found was, interestingly enough, that in one of the really impoverished schools in Hillsborough County, 75% of the kids in Hillsborough County, or in this particular school in Hillsborough County, had never been on tidal water. They've never seen it, they've never stuck a foot in it, they've never been to the beach, and that to me was incomprehensible. As a kid growing up in New York, we used to drive 1,600 miles to come to walk on a Florida beach. That was incomprehensible. How on earth can you commit to preserving something if you don't even know it's there? And how do you not understand what an economic engine that is for this community? So the answer is yes, not enough, and that's our strategic focus for next year.
Which chart 411 position on who's board by the Sunshine Bridge?
We are prohibited by law from having taken political stance. Do you want my personal opinion? My personal opinion is that I think that the damage that the construction of that port is likely to do, not on our side so much as on the other side of the mouth, the bay, is pretty substantial. And I think one of the biggest issues is going to be how that gets mitigated, and assuring that it gets mitigated, because the potential for that is pretty awesome. Yeah. Yes.
So if we don't have the ability to physically volunteer, is there a way to financially support it?
Yes, you can. You can donate to us. Like I said, we're a 501c3. By the way, I don't know if you know this about nonprofit. Under the law, you can ask any nonprofit for its votes. Any nonprofit that is a 501c3 registered corporation must disclose its financial statements publicly. Now, they don't have to mail them out to everybody in the state, but they must disclose them. So if you're ever a little concerned about whether to give somebody money or not, they must provide their. Pardon me? You can get it online, public record. Yeah, depends on whether they file a short form or long form. Public information. By the way, none of our staff is paid.
Do you, you're talking about the Sunshine Skyway, so I'm an avid diver and pretty big into marine ecology. Do you do any work with the organizations here, like say MODE or REEF or AWARE,
Yes.
right? Adult protection perspective.
MODE, in particular, back to the education piece, is they are extremely good at doing outreach with local schools and kids and families. So one of our agendas is to get MODE more involved, bringing exhibits to the schools, and what we're doing is we're writing a curriculum that wraps around that, so that the kids have some preparation going in, they have the experience, and then there's some follow-up for teachers. By the way, anybody know where our name came from? Chart 411? Any sailors in here?
The Noah's Ark.
Yeah, it's the NOAA chart for the Gulf of Mexico. It's the navigation chart for the Gulf of Mexico.
Have you done any work with USGS and their coastline?
Not with USGS. Now we do. We have had some engagement with USF College of Marine Science, which is sort of an octopus effect because everybody interacts with them. But no, we haven't worked directly with USGS. We've been in business, by the way, since we got our 501c3 status in October of 2012. So we're about a year and a half old. So we're kind of, and there are dozens and dozens of ocean-focused organizations in this region.
Have you guys done any work with your college?
Yeah, in fact, I spent a week down there this summer, and mostly because I was working with a humanities camp down there that had nothing to do with this. But I started to make some contacts with a lot of the students who are involved in the Marine program, and the volunteer program. And I hate to admit this, but one of the forms of contact we've had with Eckerd College is they towed us off of a sandbar when our boat didn't take it over the sandbar. So,
That's a great service for you.
it is absolutely remarkable. It's a wonderful program.
Yeah. So you mentioned preserving historic too, even though they might be a lot, that port is just washing away. Do you know if they are restoring that or?
You know, there is because that is federally owned, it's a little harder to get roots movement going because everything has to be done through the Park Service, the Department of the Interior, or whatever. So, yes, that's been an interest, and there is a fair amount of interest in that locally. And I think that one of the things that we're hoping we can promote with some of our elected officials, that this really is a treasure and it needs to be preserved.
That's my knowledge, not a lot is being done for the seabirds as far as the fishing lines and such. CP Times just did an article recently, 1,500 birds a day. Are you guys doing anything about that?
Well, in fact, and the answer is yes and no. We do partner with some organizations to do beach and shoreline cleanups, and that's one of the worst sources of entanglement, that and fishing gear. And I don't know if you've ever been to the fishing pier over on Reddington Beach, but they have a big sign there on how to remove a hook from a seabird. Unfortunately, most of the seabirds haven't read it, so they don't come. They don't cooperate quite as much as the sign suggests they might. But the important thing, I think, is that we're going to be involved in a cleanup. I mentioned Plant Bayou. This coast is remarkably well kept compared to other parts of the coast. This area around Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay area, there are a lot of organizations here and a lot of people do it. The seabird, I think the problem with the seabird issue is lack of information on the part of people. And there is now probably better signage around here than almost anywhere else I've ever been for how to protect them. We probably have better disposal facilities at most of our public sites than most other places do. You know, those big plastic canisters you see where you're supposed to shove your fishing line in. And I think the shoreline cleanup projects really do help keep us in better shape than they are in a lot of other
You know, if there's a plan to help these birds, because I must say, every time I go out, every time, I see a pelican.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tragic.
Yeah.
And
Well, one of the things that we have to distinguish between, though, and this is my heart bleeds for these things too, is a friend of mine who's a biologist said, you know, things die. And sometimes what we see is the natural death of a thing that's, you know, living thing. The issue of entanglement, though, I think there are three things we ought to be doing. One of them is we ought to do something about controlling plastic bags. Plastic bag looks just like a jellyfish in water. And that means that turtles ingest them, seabirds snag them, and that's a death sentence. As soon as one of those things gets in them, they're gone. In fact, the Moe read an autopsy report about a number of sea turtles that which they did autopsy. And it was astonishing what they found in them. And I'll give you an example of why that happens. And it happens with, not so much with birds, believe it or not, as with turtles. Because turtles aren't raised by anybody. The pictures of little guys scrambling into the water. They don't have parents. I mean, parents, if they're biological parents, parents don't hang around and teach them how to hunt. So it's all instinct. So anything that looks like food, they eat. And if they're in a plastic bag, looks just like food. birds will come in to get those floating, those rings that your beer cups. Yeah, they'll get tangled in those things, and there's absolutely no way to get out of it. So a lot of our effort is toward preservation and protection against trash, marine trash. One other thing, don't raise your hand, but I want you to think if you've ever participated in balloon release. That's like filling this room with toxic gas as far as sea life is concerned. When you look at us, when you look at that picture, where do you think if we release 500 balloons right there, where do you think they go? Right into the water. We're surrounded on waterfalls. In Petersburg, look at this. But Pinellas County is surrounded by water on 3 sides. And things that we see as relatively innocent activity produce horrible trash pollution.
You mentioned that you don't have any paid staff, that they're all volunteers. So how are you doing your fundraising, and what do you use your funds for?
We well, first of all, I'm a grant writer, so that's one of our revenue sources. The other is that we work with other organizations in an effort to leverage those networks for things like grants. For example, we've been working with Sunscreen Film Festival, and I don't know if you knew this or not. Sunscreen Film Festival, 9th year of last year. They're one of only a handful of film festivals in the United States accredited by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. It's a wonderful local resource, and it's unfortunately not well known. We're partnering with them to try to set up, to create a training program where we teach kids, how to make documentary films about issues in their community. And having done that, we've been working with Sunscreen to get on their screening level. They basically do a student strand that will allow them to showcase them. So what we're trying to do is to build into our program the kind of initiative that comes out of these sort of partnerships. That's a grant opportunity. We also participate in events. We sponsor something. We were the nonprofit sponsor for AVP last year. We sold, we ran the bar until that storm. Yeah, right. Until that storm came up across the bay and took out the bar and stadiums and everything else. We've been involved with Shopapalooza, which is the local shops one local business. And we, frankly, we do solicit donations, but not very aggressively. So primarily it's grants, primarily it's events that raise funds, and we do have some donations. Unfortunately, most of them come from me. Yeah.
So, everybody has loved ecologists, and you yourself said there's dozens and dozens of these organizations. So if you only get to tell us one thing, why you? Why do we care particularly that you now exist versus these other dozens of organizations?
Because what we're interested in is the Gulf Coast lifestyle and the Gulf Coast community. And that includes the history, culture, and environment. And most of our conversation has been about the environment. But we also work to preserve other kinds of entities. We're in the planning stages for a Gulf Coast music festival that will showcase local artists. We did I don't know if it was Sunscreen last year, 2 years ago. There was a blockbuster party where we closed off the 600 block of Central Avenue and brought several thousand people down there. We sponsored it to those galleries, shops, including many of the Sunscreen film attendees from out of town whom we wanted to spend money. So we have an economic focus as well. And let me say something else about the Gulf real quickly, because I got your question here. Interestingly enough, we all know about the BP oil spill. I mean, that was an environmental catastrophe of epic proportions. Let's hope we never have one, especially in such a fragile body of water. that pales by comparison to individual decisions that we make every day, each one of us, about whether to get your groceries double bagged or whether to drive the extra mile. By the way, they're pumping that oil out of there because we're using it. So what happens is we make individual decisions every day that are much more impactful over the long term